Chapter 726. When Mira saw Li Jinan, his eyes lit up and he said in surprise, aren't you the handsome guy I met at the Dongfang Hotel last time? Oh my god, you are the boss of NC Entertainment? You are so young. His voice was sharp and it sounded like he was surprised. Li Jinan had already felt that the man looked a little familiar. When he heard the man speak, he immediately remembered where he had come from. Last time in the hotel, he was hugged by a woman and called another man's name. This person seemed to be the woman's friend. A coquettish, gay? Li Jinan was speechless. He looked at Mira and nodded. Hello, I am Li Jinan. I am Li Jinan, not Li Jinan. This was the most positive and confident self-introduction. Hearing this deep, magnetic voice, Mira felt even more excited. He was so surprised that he was bursting with joy. He said, Nice to meet you, nice to meet you. I'm Mira, one of the top agents of Starshine. Oh my, you look so young. You're 29 years old, right? Oh my god, I thought I was looking at a 24 or 25-year-old fresh meat. Li Jinan had a faint polite smile on his face. It was not deep, but it was enough to make Mira more dazzled. If you come to the entertainment circle, you will definitely attract a lot of boys and girls. In the most popular saying, you can obviously rely on your face to make a living, but you choose to rely on your talent. Mira did not hide his compliment and handed out his business card. This is my business card. It's the first time we meet. Please take care of me in the future. Li Jinan felt that he could not continue the conversation. After a few greetings, he excused himself and let Mira go. Today was September 30th. It was going to be the National Day holiday. Li Jinan felt tired both mentally and physically. He took a long sigh of relief and called a meeting with the company's top executives. He was busy until the evening before he returned to his villa. The villa was empty, and only Nanny Rong was at home. Nanny Rong put the prepared food on the table. When she saw him coming back, she shouted, Third Master, you are back? The food is hot. Eat first. Li Jinan looked at Nanny Rong and said softly, Didn't I tell you to go home early? Why did you come over to help me cook? Go home early. It's getting late. That won't do. Your mother told me to take good care of you. I'm just cooking a meal. Come, eat it while it's hot. Thank you, Nanny Rong. Li Jinan didn't decline. After dinner, Nanny Rong washed the dishes and hung them out to dry before heading home. After Li Jinan took a shower and changed his clothes, he faced the empty villa. His mind subconsciously thought back to the time when he was still in the old mansion. The two babies often cried. Su Qianxi and her mother held one each and comforted them anxiously. Li Jinan watched her gradually wither from a delicate flower in the palm of Li Xicheng, but there was nothing he could do. Perhaps he was trying to escape, or perhaps he couldn't bear it. Li Jinan moved out of the old house. He was afraid that he couldn't help but love the poor little widow on behalf of his dead brother. Fortunately, he came back. This was the best outcome, wasn't it? Ding dong. His phone rang, and a WeChat message popped up, Mira. Chapter 727. Yi. The college girl who was drunk and called him Brother Luo, and in the bathroom last time? In the photo, it was a girl with long hair who looked pure and lovely. Her eyes were open as if they could speak. It turned out that she was an actress. Mira, good actress, good singing, pure and sharp. Graduated from art school, 22 years old, 168 centimeters tall. Li Jinan replied, You decide. Mira, okay, October 1st. On the first day of the National Day holiday, Su Qianxi had promised the children to take them to the Maldives, so she had to get up early in the morning to prepare. Lu Sa had packed the luggage, booked the tickets, and booked the hotel. The flight was at 10 a.m. However, things did not go as she wished. Last night, because of what happened the day before yesterday, Su Qianxi strictly stopped him from doing anything bad. Li Xiqing agreed, but the aftermath was that he pestered her early in the morning and would not let her go. When she woke up and was about to freshen up, he took her in his arms, kissing and hugging her. He was rubbing all over her body, trying to arouse her. However, Su Qianxi was a very principled person. She pushed him away and warned, "Go away. I have to prepare for the trip to the Maldives later. Let's go later." Li Xiqing hugged her and looked at her pleadingly. His dark and deep eyes flashed with an indecipherable look. "Honey, I want to." When Su Qianxi was about to speak, her lips were covered by his. Struggling, she turned her head and yelled, "Go away." At the same time, she stretched out her leg and kicked. Unfortunately, her knee hit the man's weakest and most important part. Li Xiqing only felt a piercing pain, clutching his crotch and gasping in pain. Su Qianxi was shocked and exclaimed, "Honey, are you okay? It hurts." Li Xiqing grabbed her hand and sounded very painful. Su Qianxi panicked and yelled, "What should I do? It's okay. Just rub it for me. Come on, rub it." Hearing this, Su Qianxi's original nervousness and fear were all gone. Staring at him, she punched his stomach, snorted, and turned away. After successfully getting rid of him, she coaxed the children to the living room and prepared to go straight to the airport. However, Li Xiqing was not happy. His face was sullen early in the morning, as if he was afraid that no one would know he was not satisfied. Su Qianxi saw his face and felt guilty. She pushed him and urged, "Let's go." Li Xiqing looked pale and did not move. Suddenly, the phone rang. He glanced at it and then ignored her, going to the side to answer it. She wanted to follow him, but when he saw her coming, he immediately moved away, as if he was afraid that she would hear him talking on the phone. When he was talking on the phone, he kept looking at Su Qianxi, fearing that she would hear him. Su Qianxi felt a little suspicious. Watching him hang up the phone, she asked when he walked over, "What's wrong?" Li Xiqing's expression was not very good. Hearing her words, he said sullenly, "There is something urgent overseas. I have to go on a business trip. You can take the children with you. I won't be going." Chapter 728. Li Xiqing heard that and looked sullen. He squinted at her and said, "It's about hundreds of millions of dollars. Of course, it's important. Anyway, you have children and don't want me anymore. I'll just go on a business trip." "No, Mom, let's go. I want to go to the horse's ears." Li Jianyue called Su Qianxi from a distance. After Su Qianxi responded, she pulled Li Xiqing. "Let's go. The children are waiting for us. This is the first time you have a holiday with the children. Don't let them wait for you." Li Xiqing pushed her hand away. "You guys go. I won't go. I have to go on a business trip." "You are not happy?" Su Qianxi looked at him. She heard that when men were not satisfied, their temper was not very good. This guy was also like that? Su Qianxi frowned and said with a blush, "Wait until we get to the Maldives." "No, I'm busy at the company. Help me talk to the children." Li Xiqing gently pushed her, and then the phone rang again. Su Qianxi glanced at it and saw it was a strange number. It looked a bit strange at first, but before she could see more, it was blocked by Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing reached out and pushed Su Qianxi away, saying, "It's just because I'm busy with work. Don't think too much. Go have fun with the children. Pay attention to safety. Tell Shuangyu, Cheng, and to be careful." Su Qianxi felt a little uncomfortable and a bit nervous at the same time. Li Xiqing had never been like this. Generally speaking, no matter how busy his work was, he would refuse it. It was the first time that he insisted on going on a business trip like today. "Are you really angry?" Su Qianxi took his hand and said coquettishly, "Let's wait until we get to the hotel. There's no time now. Let's not mess around, okay?" "No." Li Xiqing looked indifferent and pulled her hand away. "Go ahead. I still have to go to the company to get some documents. I will go on a business trip later." You can leave my luggage here. Bye. Then, he really turned around and walked away. Su Qianxi's heart seemed to be blocked, not very comfortable. Li Xiqing was angry. He was not like this before. Why? Was it just because she had just rejected him? Was that why he treated her so coldly on purpose? Seeing that he really left without looking back, Su Qianxi felt a bit annoyed. Forget it, if you're angry, then be angry. I'm the one who should be angry. Why didn't he give her a break? So what if he threw a tantrum? Once he calmed down, she wouldn't let him sleep with her. Let's see who was more ruthless. Seeing his back gradually disappearing at the end of the hallway, she stomped her foot and cursed in a low voice, childish. He turned around and angrily ordered the bodyguards to carry the luggage to the nanny van. Louis Han fell asleep at 4 in the morning and slept until noon the next day. But before he could have his fill of sleep, he was woken up by the sound of banging outside. Louis Han got up impatiently and walked toward the source of the sound. He was surprised to find that it was the kitchen. Luo Zhan was wearing an apron and holding a kitchen knife in his hand. He couldn't bear to look at it and stood aside, watching the big crabs in the pool struggling to escape. Louis Han chuckled and asked, "What are you doing?" Luo Zhan heard his voice and looked a bit embarrassed. His voice was a bit weak. "I'm cooking." Chapter 729. Luo Zhan said. "No, I'm learning." Louis Han could not bear to look at him and went to look at his ingredients. Fried crab in the shelter? Luo Zhan was shocked. "How did you know?" Louis Han squinted at him and snorted. "I am the god of cookery. But you did not choose the right ingredients. Look at this onion, it is not fresh at all. This is my first time buying vegetables. What else do you want?" Gee, a person who does not even know how to buy vegetables wants to cook. Louis Han looked at the ingredients. Eggplant with garlic sauce. Fish head tofu soup. Bamboo shoots and bacon. How do you want to make chicken wings? Cola. Oh, Louis Han washed his hands. Leave it. I'll do it. Luo Zhan stared blankly at him as he walked away. Looking at his back, he asked, "Hey, where are you going?" "Brush my teeth and wash my face." "Oh." Louis Han changed his clothes, brushed his teeth, and washed his face before coming to the kitchen. The big crab that was still alive had been killed by Luo Zhan. Its claws were cut off, but its mouth was still spitting bubbles. It was not dead yet. Louis Han was silent for a moment and could not bear to look at it. He took the kitchen knife from him and said, "Help me. Wash the fish head first. Don't get the red parts. Remember to clean the gills and blood clots, and then go to the water." "Okay." Luo Zhan obeyed. Louis Han carefully went to cook the crab. When he finally finished, he found that Luo Zhan had already cooked it. A strong fragrance floated out. Louis Han turned his head and found that Luo Zhan was looking at him proudly. He put the crab down and walked over. He swallowed the compliment that was on the tip of his tongue. The largest pot in the kitchen could hold 2 kilograms of water. At the moment, the pot was full of fish soup and 2 pieces of tofu. "How is it? Is it very good?" Luo Zhan raised his eyebrows at him. Louis Han was speechless. He slapped him and said fiercely, "Get out. Don't come into my kitchen." Luo Zhan looked confused and did not know what was going on. Watching Louis Han lift the pot and pour out nearly 4/5 of the water, she suddenly realized. Too much water. Louis Han glanced at him in disgust. "Idiot, don't tell anyone that you know me." Luo Zhan silently retreated to the side and had to do something else to pass the time. About 40 minutes later, Louis Han was done cooking. When it was done, Louis Han suddenly came back to his senses and said, "Oh no, I haven't cooked yet." Luo Zhan's eyes lit up when he heard that, and he said with some complacency, "I've already cooked." As he spoke, he went to open the rice pot, but... should I go downstairs and buy some rice? As soon as Louis Han saw his cowardly look, he knew something was wrong. He went forward to take a look and realized that it wasn't rice at all. It was simply porridge without any soup. It was so rotten that one could not look straight at it. Louis Han was completely defeated by him. With a dark face, he said, "Without me, you won't be able to survive." This sentence inexplicably caused Luo Zhan's heartbeat to suddenly accelerate. This sentence. What? What did he mean? Louis Han did not notice Luo Zhan's strangeness behind him. He picked up the rotten rice and said helplessly, "With some improvement, it can still be eaten as porridge. Go boil some water." When Luo Zhan heard this, his face burned even more. He tried to be casual and responded, "Oh." Chapter 730. Luo Zhan sneered. "You are useless. I am just not good at it. Let's compete in something else. Like cleaning? Or dressing up? Chasing girls?" Louis Han took out the rice from the pot and raised his eyebrows. "It seems that there is nothing you are good at." Luo Zhan was silent for a moment and said, "I can play basketball, badminton, tennis, volleyball, running, I can do all of them. How about swimming, weightlifting, push-ups, and sit-ups?" Luo Zhan was speechless. "Kill." Luo Zhan decided to ignore him. After washing his hands, he went to set the table. When Louis Han finally made the porridge, many of the fried crabs on the table had been eaten by Luo Zhan. Louis Han came up with a helpless face and reached out to grab the crab pincer that Luo Zhan had just picked up. After the meal, Luo Zhan consciously went to wash the dishes. After cleaning up everything, he came out again and found that Louis Han had fallen asleep. At this moment, Louis Han was half leaning on the bed, one foot on the sofa, one hand on the armrest, the other on the back of the chair, his head leaning against the corner of the sofa, eyes closed, breathing evenly. Luo Zhan looked at his face and unconsciously slowed down. Walking forward slowly, Luo Zhan looked at Louis Han's face and subconsciously held his breath. Louis Han was really good-looking. Louis Han's lines were strong and sunny. Whether in terms of ability or appearance, Louis Han was absolutely outstanding. But he fell in love with someone he shouldn't have. Luo Zhan had some sympathy in his heart. He took the blanket next to the sofa and covered him. His body slightly leaned down, and inadvertently, Louis Han's breath blew on his face. It was ticklish and a little provocative. Luo Zhan's heart suddenly jumped, and even he felt caught off guard. However, his body seemed to be unable to move. Luo Zhan looked at the man in front of him, slightly bent down, and gently, slowly approached. Louis Han's eyelashes were thick and slender. At this moment, his eyes were closed, and his long eyelashes were hanging down, casting on his white skin, looking very beautiful. Slowly approaching, Luo Zhan only felt a softness on his lips, and an indescribable strange feeling made all the hair on his body stand up. Suddenly getting up, Luo Zhan took a big step back and looked at him incredulously. Turning around, he immediately turned to the side of the corridor to hide. What was he doing? "What are you doing?" "Luo Zhan, you're crazy." Luo Zhan's heart was beating fast. He quickly returned to the room and closed the door. Then, he leaned against the door and gasped for breath. "Crazy, crazy, really crazy." On the sofa, Louis Han's eyelashes fluttered, and then he opened his eyes. Seeing the direction where Luo Zhan was hiding, she subconsciously reached out and touched her lips. Was that Luo Zhan? Louis Han blinked in disbelief. This Luo Zhan, who kept saying that he liked women, as a straight man, actually, secretly kissed him? Luo Zhan actually liked men? Louis Han was alarmed. He suddenly got up, threw the blanket off his body, and walked into his room. They had been living together for more than 3 years, and Luo Zhan had never revealed anything. Unexpectedly, he had actually lived with a homosexual for so long. What should he do now? Louis Han's heart was in turmoil. As smart as he was, he didn't know what to do. Chapter 731. Was he going to drive him away? Louis Han's heart was in a mess. No wonder Luo Zhan was 30 years old and had not had a girlfriend until now. It was no wonder that he often looked at her with a strange gaze. No wonder, Louis Han felt as if he had figured everything out, but at the same time, he also felt a bit of a headache. What the hell was this? A good friend who had lived with him for more than 3 years actually kissed him secretly? This situation could not be regarded as an accident, right? Louis Han patted his head in distress. Finally, he sighed, packed his luggage, and went out the door. Luo Zhan heard the sound of the door being closed, leaned against the door, and there was some indescribable disappointment in his heart. He seemed to be bent. Su Qianxi brought 3 bodyguards, Shuang Yu, Cheng, and Da. When she arrived at the Maldives with the children, they were a little sleepy and disinterested. Checking into the hotel, Su Qianxi arranged for the 3 little guys and Shuang Yu to stay in a double room, and Cheng and Da to stay in another room. The children were all sleepy, so she let them take a nap and went to her room to call Li Xicheng. There was no answer, and the mechanical female voice reminded her that the phone was turned off. Su Qianxi's little face was wrinkled, and she was in a bad mood. Li Xicheng actually turned off his phone. Had he already boarded the plane? Was he really angry? Su Qianxi suddenly felt a little regretful. If she had known, she would have followed him and asked him to turn down his work or stay with him. Or, if she had not refused him in the morning, she would not be so worried now. After making a few more calls and confirming that his phone was turned off, Su Qianxi simply stopped calling, but her mood was extremely low. The children slept until 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Waking them up to change, the bodyguards took the children to play. Su Qianxi was not interested, holding the phone and waiting for Li Xicheng's call. However, she did not get a call from Li Xicheng, but a very unexpected message from a person. Louis Han, where did you go? Su Qianxi, Maldives. Louis Han, I saw Li Xicheng at the airport, but I didn't see you. Are you not together? Seeing this message, Su Qianxi felt even more depressed. She replied, he is going on a business trip, not with me. Louis Han, picture. Su Qianxi clicked on the picture, and Li Xicheng was there, hugging a beautiful woman with blonde hair and blue eyes. Seeing this picture, Su Qianxi's heart was in her throat. Startled, he stood up abruptly. The gloominess and worry in his heart instantly turned into anger. Su Qianxi, what does that mean? What was he doing? Louis Han, welcomed the guests from afar. They have already left the airport. She felt even worse. Exiting the page, she dialed Li Xicheng's number. Shut down. What was going on? How could this be? He had lied to her. Why? Su Qianxi's heart felt like it was blocked by a big stone, and she couldn't breathe smoothly. Su Qianxi, what are you doing at the airport? Louis Han, going to Ireland for a business trip for a while. Ireland. He had said that he would prepare a grand wedding for her in Ireland. Chapter 732. Why was this happening? Could it be that Li Xicheng had changed his mind and did not want to give her a wedding? That was also true. After all, she had been out for so many years. No matter how great her passion was, it had been worn out. She should have thought of it long ago. However, wasn't he fine a few days ago? Was it just because of her rejection in the morning that he was angry, so he suddenly became cold to her? It didn't make sense. However, Su Qianxi could not find any suitable explanation to explain his sudden lie and his sudden abnormality. Su Qianxi held the phone, and her heart was indescribably complicated. What was going on? She called Li Xicheng again, but the result was still the same. The children were running around on the beach and playing very happily, but Su Qianxi's heart was indescribably complicated. What was this? He suddenly changed. What did this mean? A gust of wind blew, and Su Qianxi's heart was blown into pieces. Her heart was slightly sour. If he really had a change of heart, what should she do? Su Qianxi sadly found that she did not have a sense of security at all. For 4 years, she had been looking forward to his return every day. Now that he was back, she felt that every day was like a dream. Now, she finally felt that she had woken up from her dream. "Mom, come and play." Li Jianxian ran over to Su Qianxi, took her hand, and shouted, "Ursu and Mosen are all there. Let's play together." Su Qianxi looked at Li Jianxian's little face, which looked very similar to Li Xiqing's, and smiled gently. She let him pull her and followed him to the beach where Li Jianyue and Mosen were. What she did not know was that a pair of eyes had been staying in the dark, faintly looking over here with ferocious hatred. His eyes swept over Su Qianxi and the three children. Li Xiqing was really not there. So, it was time to do it. This time, after controlling Li Xiqing's wife and children, Li Xiqing would not be happy anymore. Su Qianxi noticed that someone was staring at her, but when she looked back, she saw the bustling people on the island. It seemed that no one was specifically staring at her. Was it an illusion? She didn't mind and quickly turned around to play with the children. When the children were tired, Su Qianxi took them to the chairs on the beach and ordered a drink for each of them. While waiting for the drink, she heard the waiter's respectful and fluent English. "Miss Tang, your freshly squeezed orange juice." Hearing this voice, Su Qianxi's back stiffened and turned to look. It was a young woman with a slender figure. She wore large sunglasses that obscured her face. She was wearing a bikini and was basking in the sun. Su Qianxi looked at her and found that her facial features were very smooth. Su Qianxi took a few glances and found that his facial features were very smooth and regular. Fortunately, it was not Su. Su Qianxi let out a sigh of relief and laughed at herself. There were many people with the surname Tang in the country. Tang Menjing was now a wanted criminal. How could she come to the Maldives? How could she come to the Maldives? But she still turned around and said, "Take care of the children. Don't let them stay alone." The three bodyguards nodded at the same time. Su Qianxi bowed her head again and said to the children, "Remember to take care of your sister. Ursu, remember not to run around. Follow Auntie Shuang Yu and Uncle Cheng and okay? Okay." After Su Qianxi said that, she couldn't help but look back at Miss Tang behind her. The woman smiled and raised the juice in her hand at her with a friendly and kind smile. Chapter 733. Su Qianxi also smiled at her to show politeness. Soon, the woman surnamed Tang stood up, and it was because of this that Su Qianxi noticed that this woman's figure was very good. Her long legs were curvy in both the front and back, and she had a typical S-shaped figure. At this moment, she was holding a glass of juice as she strode towards the inside. Su Qianxi was even more sure that it was not Tang Menjing. Tang Menjing was not so naturally beautiful. It should just be the same surname Tang. After the children finished the juice, they ran to the beach again to play. Su Qianxi also sat down on the beach, playing with the sand with them and helping the little guys build the castle. At about 5 o'clock, they returned to the hotel for dinner. It was a buffet. Several little guys were sitting on the chairs, shaking their short legs, waiting for their mother and Shuang Yu to bring them food. Cheng and De sat on the side watching the children. Vaguely, they seemed to feel that someone was staring at this side, especially the children. The two bodyguards sat at the next table and secretly became vigilant. A beautiful woman, twisting her waist, walked up to the table where the three children were, and smiled kindly and beautifully. Cheng and De looked at each other, stood up at the same time, and walked over there. The woman apparently did not expect the existence of bodyguards behind her. She sat next to Li Jianyue and asked in Chinese, "Little girl, what's your name?" However, Li Jianyue had become a lot smarter under the education of Li Xiqing. She asked, "Auntie, what's the matter?" "Auntie, there are people sitting there." Li Jianxian also said, "There are empty tables in the back. You can go there and sit." "Well, when our mother comes back, there will be no place to sit." Li Mosen also nodded in agreement. The woman was driven away by several children like this, and there was embarrassment on her face. Finally, when she heard Li Mosen speak fluent Chinese, her face seemed to be surprised. "You children all have the same mother? This little brother seems to be mixed race." Is your mother or father a foreigner? Mixed race. Foreigner. Since he was very young, he had been listening to these two words growing up. To Li Mosen, these two words were terrifying poisonous thorns. At this moment, hearing such words, Li Mosen did not want to remain friendly and said unhappily, "Auntie, my mother is coming back. Please go." The woman sneered. Just as she was about to say something, someone placed a hand on her shoulder. A tall, rugged man stood in the back, looking down at her. It looked like it couldn't speak. He lifted her up and dragged her to the side. Ah Cheng wrote a little, but the woman didn't understand sign language. In the end, Li Jianxian translated for her and said, "Uncle Ah Cheng said that we don't allow strangers to strike up a conversation. Please respect yourself." No one could stand being chased away again and again. As more and more people gathered around, the woman's face turned white and then red. Finally, she stomped her feet and turned to leave. When Su Qianxi came back, she happened to see the back of the woman leaving. Wasn't that the one just now? After asking about the situation, she was alarmed. Do not talk to strangers. If a stranger approaches you, remember to shout, "Call Cheng, Da, and Shuang Yu." Do you hear me? Chapter 734. However, Li Mosen did not seem to be in a good mood. He kept turning his head to look at the mirror beside him. His blue eyes, brown hair, and skin that was fairer than many people made him look out of place with the people around him. This little brother seems to be mixed race. Is your mother or father a foreigner? This sentence could not be dispelled in his mind. Even when eating, Li Mosen had no interest in it. Even if he called them mom and dad now, he was not their biological child. Su Qianxi saw his strangeness and did not point it out. She dipped the conch meat in the sauce and put it in Mosen's small bowl. She said, "Mosen, eat the conch meat." The children liked to eat seafood very much. They could not eat too much, but it was still okay to eat it occasionally. "Mom, I want it too." Li Jianxian looked at Li Mosen's small bowl and blinked. His saliva was about to flow down. Su Qianxi glanced at him. "Finish the drumstick in your hand first, and then I'll make it for you." During the conversation, Su Qianxi had opened a few more and put them all in Li Mosen's bowl. There was none of the twins. Li Jianrui was unhappy and pouted. "Mom is biased." She looked at Li Mosen and said, "Brother Mosen, I want it." Li Mosen looked at the conch meat in the bowl, especially when he heard Li Jianrui's bias. The loneliness that had just appeared disappeared without a trace. A smile appeared on little Mosen's face. He dug one for Li Jianrui with a spoon and handed it to her. "Ursu, eat it." Li Jianrui was excited and shouted in a sweet voice, "Brother Mosen is the best." Li Jianxian looked envious and jealous, silently gnawing on the drumstick. Li Mosen also dug one for Li Jianxian. "Desu, eat it too." Li Jianxian was happy. He hooked his arm and put it on Mosen's shoulder. "Thank you, Mosen." Su Qianxi's lips curled up. After eating with the children, she took them to the room to play. While the children were playing, she went out of the room and picked up her mobile phone to call Li Sicheng. It took a long while for the call to go through. As soon as she did, Su Qianxi heard some noise. It sounded like they were having a dinner. His fluent English made Su Qianxi dazed and confused. She blurted out, "Aren't you on a business trip? Have you arrived?" But as soon as he asked, he immediately regretted it. What if he said it? She clearly knew that he didn't board the plane. Li Sicheng seemed to be silent for a moment, then said, "No, I met my former sister, so I changed the date. I will go on a business trip tomorrow." "Are the children asleep?" "Not yet. It's only 8:00. Oh. I forgot about the time difference. Have you eaten?" "Yes, when are you coming over?" "I'm not going. I'll go home after the business trip. I still have things to do. That's all for now. Go to bed early." Then he hung up. Su Qianxi felt empty. What was wrong with him? He had been fine in the morning. Was he so angry because of her rejection? How did this happen? He felt that in just a few hours, the distance between them had widened. The sudden coldness caught her off guard. With her mind in a mess, Su Qianxi leaned against the wall, slightly dazed. After Li Xiqing hung up the phone, he picked up the phone. It was Cheng Yu. "Boss, I'm ready." "Wan Lily, Mr. Li, you will make the readers think too much." Chapter 735. Well, how is the hunter's preparation? Everything is ready and ready to start at any time. Cheng Yu was silent for a moment and asked, "Boss, is the Bo family who was with Tang Menjing 4 years ago related to Rong Rui?" Li Xiqing stood at the door of the room, holding the phone and did not speak. After a long time, he said quietly, "I don't know. You can ask Rong Rui." "I know you know." "Is Rong Anna Rong Rui's cousin?" "I have always known that Susu is Rong Rui's cousin." "This Rong Anna is the girl who used to live in the Rong family instead of Susu, right?" Because Susu's parents recognized her, the girl held a grudge, so she kidnapped Susu 4 years ago. They are the so-called drug trafficking gang, right? Cheng Yu's voice was full of suspicion and fear. She asked one question after another, but she could not get an answer from Li Xiqing. Her heart was cold. Finally, her throat was choked. She sighed and asked the thing she wanted to know the most. "Is Rong Rui also involved in drug trafficking?" "No." Li Xiqing only answered the last question. His deep and mellow voice made Cheng Yu's heart suddenly relaxed. She smiled through her tears. For the first time in her life, she was so scared by herself. Li Xiqing noticed the change in her mood and finally said, "I'm hanging up." Hanging up the phone, Li Xiqing looked at the time, said goodbye to the people in the room, and left. The next day, he took the plane to Ireland at 5:00 in the morning. Cheng Yu had been so busy these 2 days that she didn't even have time to take off her high heels. Sitting on the sofa, she took out her cell phone and made a video call to Rong Rui, who was far away in China. However, it did not go through. She called and found that the phone was turned off. What happened? When she was thinking, the hotel doorbell suddenly rang. She asked in English, "Who is it?" It sounded like a very young man outside. He said with a smile, "Room service." This voice, shocked, Cheng Yu stood up from the sofa and opened the door. Rong Rui was standing outside the door with his daughter in his arms, looking at her with a smile. "Mrs. Rong, do you need room service?" She looked at him for a long while, then chuckled, stood on tiptoe, and hugged him across her daughter. Rong Rui's eyes softened. He gently patted her back and asked in a low voice, "What's wrong?" Hearing this voice, she almost burst into tears. She forced herself to calm down and asked, "Why are you here?" "Your daughter misses you." Rong Rui held his daughter and let little Pan Pan face Cheng Yu. She was sticking out her pink tongue and reaching out to Cheng Yu with her little fist. Rong Rui smiled gently and looked at her with his amber eyes. He said in a low voice, "I missed you too." It was past 11:00 in the evening, and Louis Han was still not back. Luo Zhan tossed and turned in bed and couldn't sleep until 2:00 in the morning, but there was still no sign of Louis Han coming back. She picked up the phone and dialed his number, but the phone was off. What the hell? Where did this guy go? He had never stayed out so late before. Could it be that he had misunderstood? Louis Han didn't go out. Luo Zhan got up, turned on the light, and went into his room. He looked around and found that everything was neatly placed, but the suitcase on the wardrobe seemed to be gone. Opening the wardrobe, he found that a lot of clothes were missing. "Wan Lily, Mr. Luo, you scared our hen away." Chapter 736. What did he mean? When did Louis Han leave? He even took his suitcase and clothes, and did not even say anything. Did he go back to his hometown? Business trip? Or did he go on the National Day holiday? Luo Zhan only felt uncomfortable. Could it be that he found out about what happened in the afternoon? So, no way, this was the first time he had committed a crime. How could he be so unlucky? Besides, he did not do it on purpose. He couldn't control himself, and unconsciously, Luo Zhan felt something was wrong and picked up his phone again. After the phone could not get through, he opened WeChat and sent a message to him. Where have you been? It took more than 10 hours to travel from China to Ireland, and Ireland was 8 hours slower than China. When Louis Han received this message, he was at the airport in Dublin, at 11:30 p.m. Seeing this message, Louis Han looked at it for a moment and calculated that it should be 6:00 in the morning in China. He sent him a location message, then put the phone away and went to find a hotel. Luo Zhan was awakened by the sound of the message. He turned over and looked at the message. After seeing that it was Ireland, his heart sank. Did he need to hide so far away? What a shame. Eyes slightly down, Luo Zhan sent him another message. What are you going to do? Travel? No reply. Luo Zhan felt cold in his heart, as if he had been pinched. What to do? Louis Han seemed to have found out. What to do next? Just when Luo Zhan was at a loss, the phone suddenly rang. It was Su Qianxi. Picking up the phone, Luo Zhan said absent-mindedly, sister-in-law. Luo Zhan, do you know where Li Xiqing went on a business trip? Ah, he went on a business trip? Luo Zhan really did not know. He didn't tell you? Su Qianxi heard Luo Zhan's words and was slightly disappointed. No, he seems to be angry with me. He has been a bit strange since yesterday morning. Impossible, he can be angry with anyone, but not you. He probably has something to do on a business trip. Don't think too much. Luo Zhan sat up straight. Did you take the children to the Maldives? Yes. He didn't go? Yes, Luo Zhan also felt a bit strange. With Li Xiqing's temper, how could he be alone when the family went to play? Frowning, Luo Zhan picked up another phone and called Li Xiqing. The phone was turned off. What was going on between Li Xiqing and Louis Han? The two of them hid at the same time. If he's on a business trip, he'll probably be on a plane. I'll ask him later. Don't scare yourself. Second brother is very capable. He'll be fine. After saying that, Luo Zhan realized that he might have missed the point, so he added, it's impossible for second brother to fool around outside. He only has you in his heart, so don't worry. Thank you, Luo Zhan. Hey, don't stand on ceremony. Be careful when you play with the kids. I'm going to take a nap. Bye. Yes. Hanging up the phone, she finally calmed down a bit. Even Luo Zhan said so Li Xiqing would not do anything, right? Feeling nervous, she waited for 3 days. During these 3 days, she resisted the urge to call him. She was waiting for him to calm down and call her himself. Chapter 737. This made Su Qianxi very disappointed. In the end, she could not help picking up the phone and dialing. It was 9:00 in the morning in the Maldives. When Li Xiqing heard the call, it rang for a long time before he picked up. Li Xiqing's voice sounded sleepy, and his voice was low and hoarse like when he just woke up. What's wrong? The first sentence was not, hello, not, honey, not, Mrs. Li, but a distant, what's wrong? Su Qianxi heard these 3 words, and her eyes were inexplicably sore. Her throat seemed to be blocked by something, and it hurt. Li Xiqing. Her voice was a bit nasal as she called him. She did not call him husband, nor did she call him Mr. Li, but called him by his full name. She rarely called his name directly, which was a sign that she was angry or in a bad mood. However, Li Xiqing just casually said, yeah. Su Qianxi's heart ached. He did not seem to notice, or, he pretended not to notice. Holding back the soreness in her eyes, she calmly asked, what are you doing? Sleeping. Where are you on a business trip? Dublin. Dublin, the capital of Ireland. He had said that he would take her to a grand wedding. But, he went alone, leaving her and the children in the Maldives. Why? Su Qianxi's heart ached, and she wanted to cry. God knew that as long as he gave her an explanation, she could lie to herself to believe him. But now, Su Qianxi did not feel confident at all. What was the difference between her behavior and that of those old women who were patrolling? Both sides were silent, so quiet that it made one's hair stand on end. There was a soft knock. Li Xiqing's voice was still a little low, with emotions that she could not understand. He said, "It is 4:00 in the morning. I am very sleepy." Su Qianxi felt a dull pain in her heart. She did not say anything and hung up the phone. After the phone was hung up, Su Qianxi found that her eyes were full of tears. With a gentle blink, the tears fell. Her mood was terrible. She had been looking forward to the vacation, but because Li Xiqing did not come, she had no mood for a vacation. Especially now, that man did not even give her a call or an explanation. Su Qianxi felt even more gloomy. The three little guys were playing ball with a group of other children. They ran around happily, especially Li Jianyue. Her laughter could be heard from afar. Looking at the three little guys, Su Qianxi calmed down and opened the mom forum that she had been paying attention to for a long time. This was a website created by Louis Han, which had a large number of users. He directly made her the moderator of gossip. Su Qianxi clicked the post and asked, "Under what circumstances will a man be tired of his wife?" After explaining the situation, there was a large number of replies below. Bear's mother, the moderator, actually made a post. There were many such situations. For example, a woman became a faded old woman after giving birth. Her figure was not good, her skin was not good, or she got tired of it after a long time. For a man, there was actually no reason. Gao Zhuang Jicheng, if you don't like it, then you don't like it. Men are always looking for something new. They'll get tired of it when they're tired of it. Chapter 738. Tutu, men are all like this. 80% of your husband's heart is like this. If you don't want to give it to me, then so be it. Anyway, it's not like there is no other choice. I'll find a woman who is prettier and sexier than you to piss you off. Then I'll take this opportunity to tell you that he is very attractive and you are not the only one. The replies were like 100,000 critical hits for Su Qianxi. Every sentence stabbed into her heart. That was exactly what she was thinking. However, 4 years ago, he could go to an abandoned warehouse alone for her and narrowly escaped death. If he really did not love her anymore, then wouldn't all their love become a joke? So, it couldn't be. He must be busy. However, such self-deceiving words were shattered into pieces by a message in the afternoon. At 3:00 in the afternoon, the children were tired and taking a nap. Su Qianxi was not in the mood to play at all. Sitting in the room, she was looking at the post she posted today. A WeChat message came in. Louis Han, picture. In the picture, Li Xiqing was sitting in the passenger seat of a car, and a woman was sitting in the driver's seat. She looked to be in her 20s or 30s, blonde hair and blue eyes, wearing a beautiful brown trench coat and delicate makeup on her face. The two seemed to be talking. Li Xiqing's face was soft, just like when he looked at her. Su Qianxi held the phone in the room and enlarged the picture again and again. Every detail and every facial feature was clearly visible. After so many years of acquaintance, this person was Li Xiqing, the Li Xiqing she loved deeply. Looking at this picture for a long while, Su Qianxi immediately felt that her sky was about to collapse. Finally, she couldn't hold it anymore, holding the phone and crying. That woman was the woman at the airport that day. What about the senior sister? Would he have this expression when talking to his senior sister? Even when talking to his parents, Li Xiqing had never had this expression. She used to think that this attitude of his was exclusive to her. She used to think that Li Xiqing would only be gentle to her. As he said, he loved her forever. However, the reality gave her 2 bloody cuts. Why? Was it only because of her rejection a few days ago? Su Qianxi suddenly felt it was ridiculous. Or was it just an excuse? In fact, he had wanted to dump her for a long time, so he deliberately exhausted her and pestered her again and again, preparing for his ultimate move? So ruthless, Li Xiqing's ultimate move had completely defeated her. She could no longer hold on to any hope. She picked up the phone and dialed Li Xiqing's number. It rang a dozen times before he picked up. As soon as she picked up, Su Qianxi heard a giggle. It was a woman's voice. Holding back her tears, she asked in a nasal voice, "What are you doing?" "I'm busy." Li Xiqing's voice was soft, sounding no different from usual. "What's wrong?" After a moment of silence, she asked, "Li Xiqing." If you don't want to be with me anymore, remember to tell me. I won't pester you. If you have another woman outside, also remember to tell me. I wouldn't want a man with another woman." However, she could not bring herself to say the last sentence. Chapter 739. Su Qianxi's voice was nasal and sobbing. After a long silence, he said, "Don't think too much. I'm a little busy with work recently. I can't leave Dublin. I'll go back in a few days. Don't think too much. Be good." "Really?" "Yes, really." "Then what are you doing in Ireland?" Su Qianxi sobbed even harder and could not help crying out loud. "What's the matter? Can you just tell me? I'm here thinking about it all by myself. I'm going crazy. I can't stand it anymore." Li Xiqing frowned and asked in a low voice, "What's wrong with you? What happened?" She suddenly did not know what to say. If she told him that it was Louis Han who told her, it would definitely hurt Louis Han. However, his heart felt terrible. She never knew that Li Xiqing was such a person. His acting skills were so good, not only in front of others, but also in front of her. Such a beautiful woman was sitting next to him, and his expression was so gentle, but now he was telling her that he was a little busy with work. Liar. "Su Qianxi," he said in a low voice. "Don't overthink. I'm really busy." "Then why didn't you call me?" "I was too busy to remember." Su Qianxi suddenly felt like laughing, but she couldn't do it. In the past, no matter how busy he was, he would never forget. In the past, no matter how busy he was, he would never end the conversation first, nor would he hang up the phone first. He had changed. Not wanting to say anything more, she hung up the phone. Li Xiqing called back, and she immediately hung up. She thought that Li Xiqing would call back. However, there was nothing left. His heart was cold and dead. This situation made her feel even worse than when they quarreled. His phone vibrated. It was WeChat. "Louis Han, come to Dublin. It's not convenient for me to show up. If you have anything to say, you can say it to him face to face. Louis Han, smile, I'll pick you up when we arrive. I'm tracking down the hotel where he is staying and booked a room for you next to him." Su Qianxi felt even more ridiculous when she saw what he had said. Did Louis Han mean that he wanted her to catch them in the act? Maybe if she lived next to him, she would be able to catch him red-handed in bed? Su Qianxi, "Ihan, I don't want to go." Louis Han, Su Qianxi, "The kids are still young. I don't want to fall out with them." Louis Han, tidying herself up, she went to the children's room and rang the doorbell. Shuang Yu opened the door and let her in. The children were all sleeping soundly. When Li Jianxian slept, he looked exactly like Li Xiqing. They were still so young. Their 4th birthday was in 3 days, and her birthday was tomorrow. "From now on, I'll celebrate every birthday for you. Today is my birthday, right?" "Yes." "If I want a birthday wish, you will grant it, right?" "Yes." "Then, you'll only celebrate my birthday in the future, okay?" At that time, he looked down at her and only said one word, "Okay." After 4 years of separation, she had thought that he would celebrate her birthday with her this time. However, the reality was often crueler than the ideal. He was not by her side. Looking at the sleeping children, she took a deep breath after a long while. She took a deep breath, turned on her phone, and booked 7 tickets to Dublin. Chapter 740. The sudden decision caught the children and the bodyguards off guard. Su Qianxi asked them to pack up and check out of the room. The group hurried to the airport. Coincidentally, the person who had failed to talk to the children a few days ago saw them clearly from behind. Twisting her sexy waist, she pushed up her sunglasses and asked the receptionist at the front desk, "She checked out? So fast?" "Yes." "How long was she supposed to stay?" "It must have been a week, right?" The receptionist smiled and did not speak. With a chuckle, she quickly went upstairs. Su Qianxi soon arrived at the airport. When she boarded the plane and was about to turn it off, she saw a WeChat message. "You Lily, Qianqian, are you there?" Yu Lily rarely looked for her. Su Qianxi was a little surprised and replied, "Yes." Yu Lily also quickly replied, "Well, I am a little short of money now. Can I borrow some money from you?" Su Qianxi, "How much?" Yu Lily, 5,000. Without hesitation, Su Qianxi directly clicked transfer and transferred 5,000 to her. Su Qianxi, "I am going to turn off my phone, on the plane." Yu Lily, "Thank you." Friend has confirmed to receive the money. Getting the money, Yu Lily finally breathed a sigh of relief. She quickly paid the rent, and after seeing the landlord send an okay gesture, she sat down again. After resting for half a month, the bruises on her body had almost healed. However, because she had rested for half a month, Yu Lily did not have a salary. Every day, she spent a lot. She was used to spending money extravagantly and consumed a lot. It couldn't go on like this. She had to find a part-time job. Counting the money she had, Yu Lily only had more than 300 yuan left. She had just paid the rent for a quarter in WeChat, leaving only a few dozen yuan in change. So miserable, she went downstairs to buy a bowl of noodles and paid 10 yuan with WeChat. Yu Lily began to worry about her livelihood. These days, she had to find a part-time job. After searching online, she finally found a part-time job in a flower shop. When she used to live with Oh Ming, she learned flower arranging and cutting when she was bored, and her skills were not bad. 3 meals a day, 150 yuan a day, mainly to help during the National Day. Yu Lily thought about it and called. Soon, the boss informed her of the interview and asked her to go to work the next day. The shop owner was a middle-aged woman with a mild temperament. Throughout the day, she had been wrapping the flowers, helping to move the flowers, and trimming them. Yu Lily was busy from 8 in the morning until the florist closed at 7 in the evening. Only then could she change her clothes and go home. As soon as she got home, Yu Lily collapsed onto the bed. She didn't even want to take a shower. Inadvertently, she tilted her head and saw Oh Ming's photo on the wall. Subconsciously, she thought of the last time they met. Oh Ming's cold and sarcastic smile. Yu Lily let out a long sigh of relief. After taking a shower, she lay down on the bed in exhaustion and fell asleep. The next day, after Yu Lily had gotten used to the intensity of the previous day's work, it was obvious that she had adapted a lot. However, she met an absolutely unexpected person, her immediate boss, Mr. Li. Chapter 741. No. Yu Lily was a little embarrassed and smiled. "I'm just doing a part-time job here." "That's amazing." Mr. Li looked at Yu Lily's hand and sighed. "It must be very hard. Look at your hand, it's rough. It used to be white and tender." Then he reached out to hold Yu Lily's hand, but Yu Lily pulled it back before he could touch it. Yu Lily smiled a little awkwardly. "Mr. Li, buy it for your wife?" "Yes, it's our wedding anniversary." Mr. Li smiled with his eyes squinted. "Are your injuries healed? Can you come back to work after the festival?" "Yes. Yes, my part-time job will last until after the festival, and then I will go back to work." "Well, it's a good thing to be diligent." Work hard, and I will tell you about your new position when you come back. Yu Lily nodded and smiled while wrapping the flowers. Finally, she handed the 99 roses to him and said, "It's done, Mr. Li. Thank you, thank you." Mr. Li reached out to take it. Intentionally or unintentionally, his palm touched the back of Yu Lily's hands, and the smile on his face deepened. How much? Yu Lily didn't care too much. 600. Mr. Li nodded and took out his wallet with the flowers. After counting, he gave Yu Lily 600 yuan. Then, he counted 300 yuan bills and put them in Yu Lily's hand. The packaging is so good. This is your tip. Mr. Li, Mr. Li's smile deepened, but he quickly became angry. It's just a tip. It's normal for customers to give tips. Are you looking down on me? No, I just think it's too much. She said and was about to put it back. But Mr. Li took the opportunity to hold her hand, pushed it back, and said meaningfully, "You are worth the price." Before Yu Lily had time to think, Mr. Li put her hand back and left with the flowers. "You are worth the price." Yu Lily felt that this sentence was a little strange, so she looked back at the proprietress. The proprietress also looked at Mr. Li with a strange look and asked, "Who is that?" "My company's boss." "Here, Sister Qin, this is the money he gave me. As for the tip, can we split it together? The money is for me, and the tip is for you. Keep it for yourself. It's not easy for a girl like you. But as your big sister, I have to remind you that you have to be careful. He seems to like you very much. Since he has a family, you have to keep a distance from him." "Of course," Yu Lily said with a smile. She took the money and whispered, "This guy is so old. If I want to find someone, I will find someone tall, rich, and handsome." Sister Qin chuckled, A man doesn't have to be tall, rich, or handsome. He just has to be nice to you. You're so pretty, you can find anyone you want. There's no hurry." Yu Lily's heart warmed and she nodded. "Yes. You can come and help me on weekends when you are free. Sister Qin is very busy. It's okay on weekdays, but it's very tiring on holidays. With a beauty here, my business is much better. If you come back next time, I'll give you some tips, okay?" Chapter 742. Okay, then it's decided. Sister Qin happily took Yu Lily's hand. "Lily, do you have a boyfriend? You are so beautiful and have such a good personality. There must be a lot of people chasing after you." Yu Lily smiled. "No. My circle is relatively small, and I don't have a boyfriend. Do you have someone you like?" She subconsciously thought of Ming's face in her mind. Yu Lily narrowed her eyes and slowly shook her head. "Not at the moment." "That's great. My son is a graduate student, about the same age as you. He is about to graduate. When he comes back, I will introduce him to you." Sister Qin's enthusiasm somewhat scared Yu Lily. Yu Lily smiled awkwardly. "I am afraid that your son will not like me." "Let's talk about it later." Sister Qin saw Yu Lily's embarrassment. The more she looked, the more she liked her. She smiled and did not tease her. Yu Lily finally breathed a sigh of relief and thought far away. "I wonder how he is now." At the Dublin airport, Ming had just left the airport and saw a few familiar figures. It was actually Su Qianxi and the children. The temperature in Dublin was a bit low. Today's temperature was 10 degrees Celsius. They all looked a bit thinly dressed. Ming stopped behind and did not dare to go forward. He took a photo with his phone and sent it to Li Xiqing. He typed, "Your wife and children are all here. Did you ask them to come?" Seeing that they led them to the children's clothing store, Ming took his luggage and walked forward, carefully avoiding Su Qianxi's sight. While Su Qianxi was buying equipment for the children and changing clothes, she picked up her phone and was ready to call Li Xiqing. But she quickly changed her mind. After hanging up, she called Louis-Han. Louis-Han's voice sounded sleepy, as if he was sleeping. "Qian Qian? I have arrived in Dublin. I just left the airport and am in the children's clothing store inside the airport. Louis Hahn was a little surprised, jumped up from the bed and asked, "Didn't you say you would not come? You changed your mind? What, you won't come to pick us up?" Su Qianxi teased. "Help me book a hotel." We agreed to book it next to Li Xicheng. The hotel he's staying in now has no vacancies. Why don't you come to my hotel? How do you know? Didn't you not know I was coming? Su Qianxi felt a little strange, narrowing her eyes and asking. I just sent the client over, and he got the last room, and your room is the VIP suite on the top floor, which is the only one in the entire hotel. Louis Hahn thought about his words and said tentatively, "Where are you now?" "Airport." "All right, I'll be right there." While waiting for Louis Hahn, Su Qianxi took the child to eat at the airport restaurant. After eating, Louis Hahn just arrived at the airport gate. Walking out, she found that Louis Hahn had considerately rented a nanny van. After everyone sat down in the back seat, Louis Hahn quickly arranged for them to stay in his hotel. After she settled the children, she asked Louis Hahn what the name of the hotel Li Xicheng was staying at. Chapter 743. Catching an adulterer in bed, she couldn't believe that Li Xicheng would say something like that. Su Qianxi only felt suffocated, and her eyes were wet. She picked up the phone and dialed Li Xicheng's number. Now it was past 8 a.m. in Dublin. At this time, if Li Xicheng was not with her, he should have already gotten up to work. However, the phone rang a dozen times before it was picked up, and it was a sleepy voice. "What's wrong?" Su Qianxi heard these 3 words and felt more intense than ever. These 3 words were like a heavy hammer, hitting Su Qianxi's heart. Her eyes were stinging, and her tear ducts collapsed. Tears flowed down. Without saying anything, she hung up the phone. Li Xicheng was bewildered. He sat up and found that there were a few unread WeChat messages. He did not have many WeChat friends, less than 30 in total, and they were all family and friends. He opened it and saw it was Oh Ming. Seeing the pictures and words he sent, Li Xicheng looked at them for a long while and smiled. Su Qianxi bit her lower lip and looked at Louis Hahn. Her red eyes were filled with tears. "Do you know what is going on with him?" Louis Hahn felt a bit sorry for her. Seeing her like this, he reached out and wanted to wipe her tears. However, his big hand quickly paused in the air. He turned around, took out 2 tissues, and said, "Nothing." "Then why did you say that he caught an adulterer in bed? Did you see him with another woman?" Su Qianxi's voice was full of grievance. "Ihan, he has been very cold to me these days, which is different from before. He used to be very attached to me, and now he doesn't even call me. These days, I'm in the Maldives with the children, and I'm almost going crazy. You know, I don't know what I've done wrong. Is it really like what the internet says, that as long as a man is tired of a woman's body, he will no longer like it? However, Li Xicheng should not be such a person. Li Xicheng, her Li Xicheng, should not be such a person." Louis Hahn was silent for a moment. His eyes were full of unknown meaning, and his expression was a bit complicated. He said, "Not all men are like this. In other words, most men were like this." Disappointed, she sat on the sofa, feeling frustrated. Louis Hahn looked at her and didn't feel good either. He knew her very well. Su Qianxi had been an orphan since she was a child and had always been worried about gains and losses. Li Xicheng was too outstanding, and they had been apart for 4 years. It was normal for her to feel insecure about such a man. But, unfortunately, he could no longer insert a single inch. Louis Hahn knew that. Looking down, he felt even more frustrated than Su Qianxi. "Go in and sleep for a while. I'll pay attention to him. I'll call you if anything happens." The children had been on the plane for a long time and were also tired. They had already eaten and slept together. Hearing his words, she nodded and entered the room. However, he didn't sleep. Instead, he stared at the ceiling in a daze. What was she doing? Going to a foreign country to catch him in the act? Su Qianxi's heart seemed to be squeezed by something. An inexplicable thought came to her mind. She had become an old woman that Li Xiqing did not want. Chapter 744. The more she thought about it, the worse she felt. Su Qianxi tossed and turned for a long time before she fell asleep. At night, the sky was full of stars, shining. Su Qianxi opened her eyes, and there was no one around her. She got up from the bed and went to the children's room. There was no one there either. The entire suite was horribly empty. Su Qianxi somehow felt a bit flustered and called, "Honey." Suddenly, there was a coquettish laughter from outside, with obvious pride. Su Qianxi looked in the direction of the sound. A hot woman came in holding the arm of a tall man. The man was tall and straight, with a handsome face and indifferent lines. At this moment, he stood straight, looking at Su Qianxi in front of him. His expression was calm and indifferent. Looking at Su Qianxi, his dark and deep eyes were cold without any warmth. Su Qianxi's heart ached under his piercing gaze. What made it most difficult for her to accept was that the woman holding his arm turned out to be Tang Menjing. Tang Menjing's face was intact, as beautiful as before. At this moment, she was holding Li Xiqing's arm, smiling charmingly. "Su Qianxi, do you think you can become a phoenix after marrying Brother Xiqing? After getting married and having children, aren't you just an old woman?" Then, on the other side of Li Xiqing, a beautiful, tall woman with blonde hair and blue eyes walked out, also holding Li Xiqing's arm, provoking him in broken Chinese, "Yellow face bitch." Su Qianxi couldn't stand it anymore and rushed forward, but there was nothing. His entire body trembled violently, and then he opened his eyes. It was dark around, and the light in the room was not turned on. Su Qianxi gasped and wiped her forehead, which was already sweaty. She stood up and opened the door, and cold air rushed in. She walked out barefoot, and there was no one in the living room. Walking to the children's room, she found that the children were really gone. Her heart skipped a beat, and she was shocked. Beep! Hearing the sound of the door being opened, Su Qianxi suddenly turned around and saw Luihan walking in. Just behind Luihan, a waiter was waiting, pushing a dining cart with covered dishes on it. Luihan saw her wake up and waved to her. "You're awake? Come and eat." She looked at him and asked, "Where are the children?" "I just asked Shuang Yu to take them to play in the nearby park." Luihan opened the lid of the meal. "Come on, it's getting late. We can leave after dinner." Su Qianxi looked at the steaming food, a bit dazed, nodded, and entered the room. Sweating all over, she felt a bit uncomfortable. She said she was going to take a shower and then went into the bathroom. When he came out of the shower, the food was already a little cold. It was already past 8 o'clock in the evening when they finished eating. Luihan walked in front, and she followed him closely. However, she somehow did not dare to go forward. She paused and asked tentatively, "How about I call him and ask what he is doing? It's still so early, maybe." Chapter 745. Exposing Li Xiqing's true colors. Inexplicably, Su Qianxi felt that this sentence was really too much. There was a voice roaring in her heart, "You are the one who did not show your true colors." However, no matter how angry she was, she could not say a word. Throwing his hand away, she went straight to the elevator and pressed the button. Luihan saw that she was not in a good mood and did not speak. Entering the elevator, she asked, "Where are Desu and Ursu?" "Playing downstairs. Shuang Yu, Cheng, and Da are watching. It will be fine." "Okay." With them watching the children, Su Qianxi was more assured. It was a black Bentley. This model looked good, but it was not so fast. Following Luihan in the car, she found that Luihan had changed his car. She followed him into the car, fastened her seatbelt, and asked, "Where is the hotel?" Su Qianxi followed Luihan into the car. After fastening her seatbelt, she asked, "Where is the hotel?" But Su Qianxi could not tell exactly what was strange. Louis Han's car stopped in front of a magnificent hotel. However, before Su Qianxi unfastened her seatbelt, Louis Han suddenly exclaimed, "Do you think that person looks like Li Xicheng?" Su Qianxi looked in the direction he was pointing and saw a tall figure. Short hair, straight posture, and she could not see his face clearly. She could only see his back, with a red bag on his shoulder. Su Qianxi only glanced at him, and before she could see clearly, the man had already entered the car. Before she could figure out if it was Li Xicheng, Louis Han started the car again and chased in the direction of the car. The car was very fast and seemed to be in a hurry. Su Qianxi exclaimed. Louis Han said, "Sit tight. I'm going to catch up." "Wait, Ihan, that may not be him." "Did you see it? Are you sure it's not him?" Louis Han's tone was a bit urgent. "It's too much. He is even carrying a woman's bag. This is intolerable." Louis Han's words were powerful, and Su Qianxi's emotions could not help but be affected. Actually, carrying a woman's bag. This was too much. Louis Han stepped on the gas and chased after her. Opposite them was a red Porsche, which looked coquettish and handsome. It did not seem like Li Xicheng. Even if he rented a car, with Louis Han's style, he would at least rent a black or white one, right? The red one was Louis Han's style. Su Qianxi vaguely felt that something was wrong, but the car quickly got on the highway, closely following the red Porsche, rushing straight up. Logically speaking, if the car in front discovered that someone was following them, it should stop to take a look or ask. However, the car in front drove faster and faster as if it was afraid of being caught up. Louis Han's firepower was also stronger, so the distance between the two cars was moderate, and they soon got out of the city. Suddenly, a large wave of rose petals scattered from the car in front of them. The pink petals even stuck to the car window. There was an indescribable sense of beauty when they flew over from the front. The further they went, the more remote the surrounding roads became. Not knowing how long the car had been driving, when Su Qianxi was about to throw up, the car in front of her suddenly stopped. The place where the car stopped was in the wilderness. The bright moon was shining, and the surroundings were covered with a layer of faint silver light. A man got out of the car in front of them. It was the tall man carrying a red bag. At this moment, he turned his head and looked the most classic Irish. After getting out of the car, he smiled brightly and gave Louis Han a big thumbs up. Louis Han curled his lips and raised his eyebrows, looking at Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi was dazed. Before she spoke, the surroundings suddenly lit up with brilliant silver light. Chapter 746. The dazzling light was so dazzling that she slightly turned her head to avoid the light. Louis Han opened the roof of the car, and the dazzling light shone through it, like a divine halo in a dream. Su Qianxi suddenly felt a bit dazed and a bit confused. She was not sure what was going on, but she was not sure what was going on. In an instant, it was midnight. A beautiful silver bird flew over his head, bringing with it specks of silver light that drifted down along with the air. The specks of light were like stars in a dream. Seeing this, Louis Han got out of the car, went to the passenger side, and opened the door for Su Qianxi. He reached out and said, "Qianqian, someone is waiting for you." Or rather, it was waiting for them. He was waiting for Louis Han to take her there. As a knight. In Louis Han's deep eyes, there was an indescribable complexity. The deep pain seemed to have settled for thousands of years and could no longer be revealed. Su Qianxi looked at Louis Han's hand and felt a little dazed. However, she still stretched out her hand and gently put it on his hand. Just at the moment when Su Qianxi got out of the car, there was a cheer around. Su Qianxi was shocked and looked to the side. At the same time, the wind blew and swept everything away. Not far ahead, there was a tornado, rolling all kinds of beautiful and fragrant petals. A fragrant wind swept over and landed on Su Qianxi's body. Flowers danced around her, breathtakingly beautiful and dazzling. Louis Han led her toward the open space in front of them. Around them, layers of lights were ignited. The silver light increased layer by layer, and in the end, Su Qianxi could not even see the surrounding scenery. The whole world was only left with a vast expanse of silver light. So dazzling, so bright. The rest, there was nothing. Su Qianxi inexplicably felt a little flustered. However, at this time, Louis Han held her hand and gently raised it, kissing it lightly like a feather. Su Qianxi's heart trembled, and she looked at Louis Han incredulously. Louis Han's eyes were soft and watery, but with an indescribable reluctance. He said softly, "My princess, I wish you happiness. My Qianqian, I wish you happiness. My first love, I wish you happiness. I am no longer qualified to stand by your side." A knight was destined to be a knight. The one to protect the princess could only be her prince. Louis Han smiled gently and let go of her hand. She was surrounded by emptiness, but the only thing she could rely on let go of her hand at this moment. Su Qianxi was shocked and subconsciously grabbed his hand, shouting, "Han, what are you doing?" The smile on Louis Han's face deepened, but his heart felt like it was being torn apart again. "Stand here, don't move." Louis Han let go of her hand and slowly stepped back, reluctantly looking away. In the end, his figure was hidden in a large area of silver light. She could no longer see him clearly. It was as if he had decided to disappear from her world. The inexplicable feeling made Su Qianxi feel a bit suffocated. Just as Zhang Xian was at a loss for what to do, he suddenly felt something tighten around his waist. A familiar feeling and aura came from behind him. Su Qianxi's body stiffened, and her whole body froze. Chapter 747. The low and deep voice in her ears overlapped with the one from 4 years ago. Back then, he had been beaten to the brink of death in front of her eyes. Just as she was about to break down, he had said the same thing to her. The voice triggered the flood of memories. Su Qianxi's eyes were wet, but her body did not move a bit. It was as if the man who vomited blood and smiled at her appeared in front of her again. Li Xiqing hugged her from behind, his arms getting tighter and closer. Putting his face into her neck, he gently kissed her cheek and whispered, "Mrs. Li, happy birthday." Su Qianxi's body was stiff, and she did not respond. Or rather, she had forgotten how to react. Suddenly, there was a burst of cheers. The silver light that had just shrouded the sky and the earth, from somewhere above, seemed to be gently touched by the center of the enchantment and quickly began to recede. The surroundings returned to the pitch-black and boundless expanse, and light and dreamy music rang out. Colorful butterflies fluttered about on the ground, bringing with them a colorful radiance as they fluttered about in the sky. The butterflies flew high in the sky. Su Qianxi couldn't help but look up and accidentally saw the sky full of stars, densely packed with moonlight. The bright stars were inlaid in the dark night sky. In front of her eyes, the butterflies were flying, and there seemed to be silver light lingering, shocking. Su Qianxi had lived 2 lives and had never seen such a scene. Amazing. The beautiful pictures she had seen in both lives were probably not even 1 in 10,000 of what she had seen in front of her. Touched, was this the true face of Li Xiqing's affair? Unconsciously, Su Qianxi had tears in her eyes. In front of her, it was enough to satisfy any woman's beautiful fantasy. Dreamy, exquisite, and soul-stirring beauty. This was not the special effects in the movies, nor was it the scene in her dream, but the real face of Li Xiqing in front of her. "Mom! Happy birthday!" A young voice came from afar. The voices of the 3 little fellows converged together to form a simple birthday wish. Li Jianhua was wearing a white dreamy princess dress and holding a large gift box in her hand. She was running towards Su Qianxi with her short legs. When the little fellow ran, his hair was blown by the wind around him. His little face was flushed. Holding the big gift box, he shouted as if he was asking for praise, "Mummy, Mummy, this is Daddy's birthday present for you." Su Qianxi's eyes were sore, and she couldn't help crying. But at the same time, she couldn't help but laugh through her tears. "Why are you here?" Li Jianhua tilted her head, looked at Li Xiqing behind Su Qianxi, and said with a smile, "Dad picked us up, saying that today is Mom's birthday, and we have to give Mom a big surprise. Li Xiqing chuckled and loosened his grip slightly. She squatted down, took the gift box from the little guy, and opened it. It was a pair of transparent crystal shoes. Seeing the shoes, Su Qianxi was dazed. When Li Jianhua saw it, she blinked and looked up at her father. Soon, she smiled happily, turned around, and ran back with her short legs. Chapter 748. Li Mosen was wearing a handsome and beautiful white suit, holding a gift box that was larger than his body, which looked a bit funny. Su Qianxi saw the little guy like this, chuckled and opened her arms to welcome his gift. Li Mosen's little face suddenly turned red, and he shouted, "Mom, happy birthday." Su Qianxi rubbed his little head. "Thank you, Mosen. This is a gift from Dad to you." Su Qianxi chuckled and opened the gift box. There was a white dress lying inside. The first thing she saw was the dazzling diamond, as well as the exquisite and neat handmade traces. The beautiful white dress made Su Qianxi couldn't help but hold her breath. Picking up the dress, he discovered that it was an exquisite and beautiful white dress that was so elegant that it could enchant one's heart. Beautiful. This is a wedding dress. Li Mosen's little face was also stunned, but soon, he ran away with a red face. The surroundings were pitch black. Colorful butterflies were still fluttering in the air, and silver light was slowly lingering in the air. In the haze, the bright moonlight shone down, covering the sky full of stars and surprises, but the surrounding darkness was still not covered. Su Qianxi knew that there were many, many people around. There were at least dozens of people exclaiming like that. However, under such light, Su Qianxi did not see anyone except Li Xiqing and a few little guys who ran out to send things. Li Jianxian was the last to appear, unlike the two little guys before him, who ran out wildly. Instead, he stood straight, holding a bright red rose in his hand, and walked slowly toward this side. There was no expression on his little face. His black hair was combed into a handsome style, and his white straight suit looked formal and cute. The little guy walked in front of Su Qianxi, bowed to her like a gentleman, handed out the rose, and said, "Dear mother, please accept my most sincere blessing. I wish you a happy birthday." Su Qianxi couldn't help but chuckle, took the rose, and reached out to rub his little head. Li Jianxian's little face was red, and he took her hand away with some dissatisfaction and said, "Don't touch my hair, it will be messed up." Then he took out a white velvet box from his pocket and said, "Finally, I wish Mom and Dad a long life together." Seeing the long box, Su Qianxi was dazed. When Li Jianxian saw that his mother didn't take it, he looked up at his father. Li Xiqing curled his lips, took the ring box, and gently pushed him. "Go play with your sister." Li Jianxian was a little annoyed by his words, but he didn't say anything. He turned around and walked back. Looking at her son's back, she took a long while to come back to herself and looked at Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing smiled and opened the box in his hand. There was a man's ring with straight lines, and there was a picture of a deer on it. As for the other one, it was a pigeon's egg diamond that was designed into a deer's head. It looked playful yet exquisite. "Have I ever told you that you're like a little deer most of the time?" Li Xiqing's eyes seemed to be embedded in the night lake, which was shimmering and dark. At the same time, there was a reflection of the moon surrounded by stars, so beautiful that it was hard to look away. Chapter 749. Do you like it? Hearing this question, Su Qianxi smiled with red eyes. Do you like it? Who wouldn't like it? Who wouldn't like such a birthday? Instead of replying, she leaped forward and threw herself into his arms. Li Xiqing was caught off guard, but his posture was still as steady as a mountain, not shaking at all. Holding her in his arms with one hand, Li Xiqing bowed his head and looked at her with a smile. Su Qianxi looked up, pouted, and punched him hard in the chest. She closed her eyes, and large drops of tears rolled down her cheeks. She cursed, "You bastard." Li Xiqing did not resist, letting her punch him without making a sound. Su Qianxi punched him a few times, and her tears became more and more intense. Finally, she threw herself into his arms and burst into tears. I thought you had someone else. I was scared to death. Li Xiqing smiled gently, held her in his arms, and said in a low voice, You don't have confidence, either. How can someone else be as good as you? Su Qianxi cried even harder, holding his waist with her hands, crying like a child. She hit his back hard and shouted, Why did you lie to me? I was scared to death. You even colluded with Yihan to lie to me. You know that I trust Yihan the most. You, bad guy. Li Xiqing hugged her and wiped away her tears with pity, but he could not hide the smile on his lips. He whispered, Don't cry. You liar. Well, I am a liar. Li Xiqing wiped the tears from her eyes with his big hand and whispered, Don't cry, okay? You have to be a bride later. What if you look ugly? Su Qianxi was so scared that she immediately choked and blinked at him, a little dazed. Li Xiqing looked at her with deep eyes and chuckled. His forehead touched hers, and he bowed his head to kiss her. Don't cry. Su Qianxi sniffled, feeling wronged. God knew that her mood these days was even worse than when Li Xiqing did not come back. She really thought that he did not want her anymore. She really thought that he cheated on her. Thinking of this, Su Qianxi's throat was choked again, and she sobbed while holding him. Li Xiqing frowned. Seeing that she was about to cry, he hugged her and kissed her lips. Su Qianxi was kissed so suddenly that she stopped crying. He hugged her and deepened the kiss. His hands slowly climbed up her shoulders and took the wedding dress from her hands. His movements were gentle and full of pity. She responded obediently, and the two of them kissed. In the overwhelming silver light and colorful butterflies, it seemed dreamy and distant. The surroundings were filled with cheers, mocking whistles, cheers, and voices of agreement. All of them gathered together. She was shocked and quickly pushed him away. The smile on Li Xiqing's face widened. He gently reached out and waved. Suddenly, the surrounding lights and scenery changed with the two of them as the center. Several women ran towards Su Qianxi, and Su Qianxi recognized them at a glance. One of them was Cheng Yu. And just behind her, wasn't it Sunny who had styled her in the Maldives? The lights around them changed, and the music grew louder. The music playing in the scene was the most classic, I love you. Imrither Foria there's nothing more atose I'm just the Pithidi Remini Andra Toste I love you, I'm waiting for you here. No words are needed. I'm very happy that you belong to me. I love you. Dash. Chapter 750. Here, it was a wilderness. If it was natural, then it would be natural grass and trees. Lu Yihan looked at Su Qianxi being surrounded and left, with envy in his eyes. In the distance, Li Xiqing was wearing a straight white suit and a white bow tie. His tall and straight figure, in such light, looked particularly handsome. This man was too excellent. Not only was she outstanding in appearance, but also in her heart. Lu Yihan was ashamed of his own inferiority. When Li Xiqing came to him last week and asked him to help plan the wedding, Lu Yihan refused. He and Lu Yihan were rivals in love. Why would Lu Yihan help his rival? But later, seeing more and more smiles on Qianqian's face and the children's happiness. Their family of 5 was so happy that it made people envious. Several times in his sleep, he dreamed of Su Qianxi's reproachful expression. She asked, Why don't you want to surprise me? Why don't you want to give me happiness? Don't you like me? Don't you love me? Why are you so selfish if you love me? Lu Yihan also asked himself. Why are you so selfish? If you love someone, you should hope that the other party is happy from the bottom of your heart, right? After discovering that Luo Zhan was very likely to like him, Lu Yihan thought of running away. Maybe it was a coincidence, maybe it was an excuse. Lu Yihan accidentally saw the word Ireland at the airport. Since he had nowhere to go, he might as well give her a surprise. Give her one last surprise with his participation. In the past few days, Louis Han had witnessed Li Xiqing working from morning to night, sleeping less than 5 hours a day. From the design of the wedding dress to the design of the venue, Li Xiqing did many things by himself, not allowing any small mistakes. When he saw the venue, Louis Han was only shocked. After asking, he learned that Li Xiqing had been planning it since 5 years ago. After 4 years of absence, Li Xiqing had made it more perfect and detailed, making everything more dreamy. What a surprise! Louis Han was ashamed of his efforts. Seeming to have noticed Louis Han's gaze, the tall white figure slightly leaned over. Li Xiqing turned his head and looked in the direction of Louis Han, seeming to be in a very good mood. Because of the exhaustion of staying up all night for several days, there were not many traces of fatigue on his face. He was as indifferent as ever, but this time, his face looked softer than usual. Li Xiqing walked toward Louis Han. At the same time, Ming also walked toward Li Xiqing. When the three of them gathered, Louis Han suddenly felt a little awkward. If he remembered correctly, their relationship seemed to be a little complicated. He liked Su Qianxi, and she liked him. But, Yu Lily liked him, and he took care of her. Ming met up with Li Xiqing and walked toward Louis Han at the same time. Li Xiqing threw it to Louis Han. It was a firework. Putting the fireworks on his chest, Louis Han took the cigarette that Ming handed over. Li Xiqing looked at him meaningfully. Thank you. I didn't help you. I just wanted to give Qianqian a surprise. Louis Han took the cigarette, lit it, and slowly took a puff. You got lucky. Dash. Chapter 751. Li Xiqing heard that and chuckled. Ming also lit a cigarette, glanced at Louis Han, and asked, How long have you known Yu Lily? Louis Han did not expect Ming to suddenly speak. After a pause, he looked calm, exhaled the smoke, thought for a moment, and said, About 9 years, or 10 years. It's not a short time, but we didn't communicate much. In high school, she and Qianqian had to work to earn tuition fees, but I was deskmate with Qianqian at that time, so our relationship was better. As for my relationship with Yu Lily, it was more ordinary. It was just a little better than ordinary classmates. Su Qianxi had been working in convenience stores or shopping malls, while Yu Lily went directly to bars or KTV to sell cigarettes and alcohol. This way of making money was certainly faster. He also believed that Yu Lily would protect herself well, but, later he learned that Yu Lily was a mistress of a rich man, and finally, the last trace of good impression Louis Han had for Yu Lily was gone. Men liked good girls, and Louis Han was no exception. In contrast, Su Qianxi was more gentle and well-behaved. Therefore, for a person like Yu Lily, Louis Han had avoided her as much as possible in the past few years. After all, it was not a secret that she liked him. Hearing Louis Han's explanation, Ming lit a cigarette, raised his eyebrows, and asked, How long have you known Su Qianxi? 13 years and 5 months. Almost without hesitation, Louis Han blurted out. However, as soon as he said it, he received a dangerous look from Li Xiqing. Louis Han did not even expect that he would remember it so clearly. Obviously, he did not deliberately remember it, but this time seemed to be branded in his heart, and he naturally remembered it. Laughing, Louis Han's lips were full of self-mockery. More than 10 years, still a step behind you. Reaching out and putting his hand on Li Xiqing's shoulder, Louis Han let out a breath. Treat her well. If you are not good to her, I will find you at any time. Li Xiqing indifferently slapped his hand away, with a cold look in his eyes, and slowly said, Rest assured, you will not have this chance. I hope so. The corners of Ming's lips curled up into a devilish smile. This smile contained ridicule and mockery, but it was mostly filled with an indescribable helplessness. You Lily, what should I say? He thought that the person she was waiting for, the person she wanted, at least cared about her. However, seeing Louis Han's attitude toward Su Qianxi and Yu Lily, Ming couldn't help but feel sad for Yu Lily. Thinking of that woman, Ming's dark brown eyes were full of sympathy and helplessness. Su Qianxi was led by Cheng Yu and Sunny to a place and found that it was not the wilderness. Going down, it turned out to be a magnificent hotel. The place she was at just now was clearly the top floor of this hotel. Su Qianxi was shocked by the terrain. It turned out that the scene just now was an illusion deliberately made by Li Xicheng. This was actually a resort, and the area was a bit remote. After being taken into the hotel, Su Qianxi entered a suite. There were many people in the suite. Chapter 752. Song Yifan and Rong Xian, they met. Su Qianxi seemed to have seen something terrible and exclaimed, "Dad, you." As soon as she said that, Song Yifan and Rong Haiyue looked over at the same time. For a moment, there was only one word floating in the air, awkward. Rong Xian stood in the middle of them, looking a bit embarrassed. She coughed and said, "Su Qianxi, go in first." Then, Rong Xian walked toward Su Qianxi and pushed her into the room. Several women entered the room together. Su Qianxi was a bit worried. Will it be okay to leave them outside? Rong Xian was also uncertain. Pursing her lips, she said after a long while, "Your dad knows what to do." Su Qianxi frowned and asked, "Which dad?" Rong Xian was silent for a moment before she said, "Both dads." A long time ago, Rong Haiyue knew Song Yifan, but Song Yifan did not know him. This was the first time that Rong Haiyue had looked at Song Yifan face to face. It was very sudden but expected. On such an important day, Su Qianxi's parents could not be absent. Since they were Su Qianxi's parents, of course, Rong Xian, Rong Haiyue, and Song Yifan would be there. Xing Shiming looked at them, coughed, and said, "You must be Major General Rong. I've heard a lot about you. Nice to meet you." Rong Haiyue just nodded slightly, looked at Song Yifan, and said, "You must be Mr. Song Yifan. Speaking of which, I am one of your listeners. You play the piano very well." "Thank you." Song Yifan smiled like a gentleman. When he was about to say something, the little girl suddenly shouted, "Grandpa, hug." Song Yifan and Rong Haiyue looked down at the same time. Li Jianyue was not far from them, reaching out to Rong Haiyue. The smile on Rong Haiyue's face widened. He squatted down and picked up Li Jianyue, saying, "Where is your brother?" "My brother is inside." Xing Shiming felt even more embarrassed. He thought that the grandpa the little girl called was Song Yifan. Song Yifan also felt a bit embarrassed and said, "I'm going out to see if there's anything I can do to help." "See you." Rong Haiyue just nodded and watched them leave. His eyes were obscure. The child chose him, but what about Rong Xian's choice? Who could it be? The outdoor wedding at night was held under the starry sky. The MC was a famous local priest in Ireland. At this moment, he stood solemnly and divinely in the most eye-catching spot. His sonorous voice rang out, bringing bursts of excitement to the scene. "Let's welcome the bride." Nervousness, apprehension, excitement. After taking several deep breaths, she took Rong Haiyue's hand and walked out. The wedding. How many weddings could there be in a lifetime? For the first time, she held her so-called uncle's hand and walked into the wedding hall. At that time, he was cold and aloof. Even when he took her hand, his expression was stiff and indifferent. There was not the slightest bit of emotion. But now, she was holding her biological father's hand and walking to her beloved husband's side. Behind them, her son and daughter followed. The guests around her whistled and cheered from time to time. Su Qianxi glanced around and found many acquaintances. Chapter 753. Many familiar faces were looking in his direction. Knowing that with the veil and the light at night, they might not be able to see her clearly, Su Qianxi still couldn't help feeling nervous. Blushing slightly, she lowered her head and was led to the front by Rong Haiyue. This was the first and last time for Rong Haiyue to send his daughter off. He thought that it would be Rong Anna, who he had raised for more than 20 years. But now, it was his own daughter who had been away for more than 20 years. Life was full of emotions for Rong Haiyue. Looking at the excellent son-in-law in front of him, whether it was appearance or ability, Rong Haiyue could not find any fault. If there was anything he regretted, it was that in the past 4 years, when his daughter needed a husband the most, he was not with her. Fortunately, all the effort was worth it. The happiness that belonged to them had finally come. Giving his daughter's hand to Li Xicheng, Rong Haiyue's heart turned into the most emotional hug. Patting Li Xicheng's back, Rong Haiyue suddenly felt a little like crying. He choked and said, "Take good care of her." Li Xicheng gently patted his back and said firmly, "As long as I am alive, I will not let her suffer. Even if I have to wait for 100 years, I will not let her down." A few simple words, but powerful. Su Qianxi heard this and was quite moved. She looked up at him. Li Xicheng seemed to notice her gaze and also looked over. In an instant, their eyes met. They looked at each other, leaving a different kind of affection that could only be understood by each other. The wedding march was getting higher and higher. Led by Song Yifan, the beautiful music flowed into everyone's ears and into everyone's heart. Time passed slowly, and all that was left was beauty. The priest's voice was solemn and sacred, and Su Qianxi's mind went blank. She was nervous, but at the same time, happy. Not knowing how long the priest had been talking, Su Qianxi suddenly heard the priest calling her name. "Miss Su Qianxi, do you want this man to be your husband and marry him? In sickness and in health, or for any other reason, to love him, to care for him, to honor him, to accept him, to be faithful to him till the end of time?" Hearing this question, Su Qianxi chuckled. He had been her husband for a long time. Whether it was his previous life or this life, he could not escape. Whether it was her previous life or this life, she loved him deeply. "I'm willing." Su Qianxi couldn't help blushing. "Mr. Li Xicheng, are you willing to marry this woman to be your wife? In sickness and in health, or for any other reason, to love her, to care for her, to honor her, to accept her, to be faithful to her till the end of time?" Li Xicheng looked at her and said word by word, "I do." The pastor then looked at the audience, stretched out his hands, and asked solemnly, "Are you all willing to testify for their marriage vows?" Cheers erupted from below. The voices of men and women mixed together to form a loud and clear tide. "Yes." Chapter 754. Su Qianxi spread out the ring box in her hand, opened the box, took out the ring, and put it on Li Xicheng's ring finger. Li Xicheng did the same. "Now, I officially announce that you are husband and wife under the witness of love and family. The groom can kiss the bride." Su Qianxi blushed and lowered her head. Li Xicheng lifted her veil, lovingly held her face, and kissed her cheek. At the scene, there was a wave of excitement. Cheers, congratulations, and simple mockery mixed together. Yu Lily felt envious just by hearing it through the phone speaker. What a big deal. Li Xicheng was too concerned about Su Qianxi. What to do, so envious, Yu Lily stayed up late to watch the live broadcast of their wedding. Every picture, every detail, was as exquisite as a century blockbuster. Would Su Qianxi think that she had walked into a Hollywood blockbuster? At 5:30 in the morning, Yu Lily looked at Su Qianxi and Li Xicheng's happy appearance on the phone, envious. In addition to envy, Yu Lily had no other emotions. After the live broadcast, Yu Lily opened the page and scrolled through Weibo. She found that they were all the hot topics. Shocking. The LS Group dog abuse couple returns. Are you ready for dog food? Late night dog food, LS couple wedding in Ireland, scene comparable to Disney blockbuster, everything every woman longs for. She got, waiting for 4 years, everyone says she's stupid, but she doesn't know she's the biggest winner in life. All kinds of titles, short and concise, just thinking about it was enough to know what happened to them. So envious, Yu Lily chuckled, turned off the phone, and put it aside, but she couldn't fall asleep. At 7:00, she got up on time, washed, and spent 5 yuan on breakfast. After eating, she went to the flower shop at 7:50 and opened for business. All the dreams, all the beauty, would only be on Su Qianxi. She was lucky. And you, Lily. She deserved it. After the ceremony, other things didn't seem to matter. The people who came to Ireland this time were all good friends and brothers of Li Xicheng, and the rest were all related to Su Qianxi. Except for Grandpa and Lu Sa, everyone else in the family was there. The children were following Li Jinnan and Louis Han to get all kinds of red envelopes. Su Qianxi changed into a Chinese-style toast dress. After a round of toasting, she was exhausted. Since they were all acquaintances, Su Qianxi simply went to the hotel. After removing her makeup and taking a shower, she laid on the bed and played with her phone. Seeing so many messages on her phone, she realized that the wedding had been broadcasted live. It should be midnight in Huaxia now. The popularity was higher than any previous one. Su Qianxi went to the list and saw that it was all about her wedding. An inexplicable sense of satisfaction welled up in her heart. Suddenly, she saw a title, waiting for 4 years. Everyone said she was stupid, but didn't know she was the biggest winner in life. It was a long article, describing Su Qianxi's experience in the past few years and waiting. Su Qianxi felt a bit magical after reading it. In the eyes of outsiders, she was actually this great. She clicked forward happily and attached the words, "Facts have proved that all the waiting is worth it, love." Chapter 755. I'm so busy outside, and you ran away after enjoying yourself. You are so heartless. As he spoke, he had taken off his coat and untied the bow tie around his neck. Su Qianxi put her phone aside and sat cross-legged on the bed in a bathrobe. Looking at him, she said with a smile, "Honey." "Yes?" Li Xicheng looked over and took off his clothes. "Honey." "Yes." "Honey." Li Xicheng did not respond this time. While unbuttoning his cufflinks, he walked over to the bed and looked at her with a pair of deep eyes. Su Qianxi blushed and suddenly covered her face, falling toward the bed. Li Xicheng felt inexplicable, but he was amused by her unknowingly. Jumping forward, he straddled her and whispered, "What are you laughing at?" Su Qianxi took her hand away, blushing, and asked, "Am I beautiful?" Hearing this, he felt a little funny and deliberately said, "Not beautiful." Su Qianxi was unhappy. She pouted and kicked him away. "Go away." With a smile in his eyes, Li Xicheng leaned close to her and said in a low voice, "You can make me crazy even if you are not beautiful. If you are a little more beautiful, wouldn't I be in heaven?" Then he leaned over and wanted to kiss her. Su Qianxi's heart was overflowing with honey. However, when he was about to kiss her, she tilted her head and pushed him away, saying, "You smell like alcohol. Go take a shower. Give me a kiss before you go." With that said, he reached out to grab her face. Su Qianxi dodged again and reached out to cover his face. "I won't kiss you if you don't take a shower." "Okay." Li Xicheng was a little reluctant, but he still got up and said, "Okay." Seeing him slowly getting up, Su Qianxi let go of his hand. But unexpectedly, he suddenly pressed down again and kissed her on the face before he got up with satisfaction. Su Qianxi wiped her face with disgust and turned over on the bed with a grunt. But her heart couldn't help but quietly tremble. Suddenly, her phone rang. She took it and saw it was Luo Zhan. Where is Louis Han?" "Su Qianxi, I don't know. Maybe in the room. 709, go check it out." Okay." Following the room number, Luo Zhan felt inexplicably nervous. His heartbeat was like thunder, rumbling non-stop. What should he do? He didn't dare to go. But someone had to make things clear first. He was the one who caused the trouble, so he had to solve it, right? At 7:09, Luo Zhan rang the doorbell and deliberately covered the peephole. Sure enough, the person inside couldn't see outside, so he asked, "Who's there?" It was really Louis Han's voice. They hadn't seen each other for a few days, and Luo Zhan actually missed her. "It's me." After a short silence, Louis Han opened the door. He looked like he had just taken a shower and was drunk. His hair was half wet and a little messy. Louis Han was wearing a bathrobe. After opening the door, he turned around and lay on the bed without a second thought. Luo Zhan naturally walked in and closed the door. Louis Han. Yes. Louis Han. What? Louis Han's voice sounded a little impatient, and he took a pillow to cover his face. Luo Zhan was a little hesitant. He walked over and sat on his bed, saying, "When are you going back to China?" Chapter 756. Oh. I see. Luo Zhan suddenly felt that he couldn't find a topic. He was embarrassed, guilty, and nervous. Did Louis Han know or not that he had secretly kissed him? Seeing him like this, Louis Han sat up, holding a pillow, and asked, "Do you have something to say to me?" "No, you always act like this every time you need something from me. Who are you trying to fool?" Louis Han kicked him. "Say it." Luo Zhan was speechless. Louis Han waited for a moment and found that Luo Zhan still did not speak. He shoved a pillow into his face, then fell on the bed and said, "If you have nothing to say, get out. I am so sleepy." Luo Zhan lowered his eyebrows and said, "My mother wants me to have a girlfriend and introduced me to a girl. She is very beautiful." Louis Han took the pillow away and felt a little strange. Luo Zhan was going to have a girlfriend? If it was a few days ago, Louis Han would have laughed at him. How could a coward like you have a girlfriend? Or, which girl is blind enough to fall for you? But now, Louis Han was stunned and said, "That's good. Don't you like her?" "I like her," Luo Zhan said without hesitation. "So I am moving away. When I go back, I will move to the place where the girl lives." "No way." Louis Han suddenly got up and looked shocked. "How long have you known her? Are you living together?" "No, just temporarily. She knows that I am sharing a room with a man and feels that it is not convenient, so, oh." Louis Han was speechless and felt a little complicated. Girlfriend? Not convenient to share a room with a man? Who was he kidding? Luo Zhan was not the kind of person who would live with someone so easily. But Louis Han did not expose him. After a while, he said again, "Congratulations." Luo Zhan felt a little uncomfortable and turned to look at him. Louis Han looked a little tired. His hands were on the bed behind him, looking a little lazy. "Louis Han, I seem to fall in love with you." "I seem to fall in love with a man." Louis Han looked over curiously and was a little confused. Luo Zhan chuckled and lay on his bed, looking at the ceiling, and said slowly, "I seem to be a little reluctant. After all, we have lived together for so long." Inexplicably, there was a kind of sadness of parting. Louis Han felt a little annoyed. He stood up, took the cigarette box next to the bed, and lit one. This was a local specialty of Ireland. Louis Han liked the taste very much, but he could not taste it today, so he was full of annoyance. Luo Zhan saw his strangeness. He stood up, patted himself, and said, "Let's go." Walking slowly to the door, Louis Han followed him and silently sent him out. When Luo Zhan was not far from the door, he suddenly turned around and looked at Louis Han. Louis Han took a drag on his cigarette. His hand had just left his lips. Before he could put it down, he saw Luo Zhan suddenly coming forward. His lips softened, and Louis Han looked at the face in front of him incredulously. His heart seemed to tremble for a moment. He felt an inexplicable sense of panic. Luo Zhan sucked in his mouth and quickly let go. Under Louis Han's shocked gaze, he slowly exhaled the smoke, suppressed the panic in his heart, and casually said, "The smoke is good, but my mouth is not very good. Let's go." With that, he opened the door, stepped out, and closed the door. There was no pause. Chapter 757. Louis Han stood there for a long time, as if he was scared. Even he did not know how long he had been standing there. Looking down, the cigarette ash had fallen to the carpet, and the flame had burned to the butt. After a long time, Louis Hans suddenly laughed, angry and sarcastic. Irritated, he walked into the bathroom, threw the cigarette butt into the toilet, and pressed the flush button. The sound of flushing rang. Seeing the cigarette butt being flushed away, Louis Hans inexplicably felt a little relieved, as if something bad had been washed away. But thinking of what Luo Zhan had just done, he couldn't help but scratch his head and curse irritably, "Damn it! This is ridiculous." The wedding broadcast was unusually lively, unusually sensational, and unusually dreamy, causing a sensation all over the country. The news, the internet, the big screens in various shopping malls, and the small TVs on buses and subways were all about Su Qianxi and Li Xiqing's wedding. This kind of popularity was comparable to the presidential election ceremony in the United States. A slender and tall figure was sitting at the bar, making a cocktail. Wearing a red sequined fishtail dress, she had a sexy figure and a beautiful and delicate mask on her face, only revealing a small cherry mouth and a pair of beautiful big eyes. The customers who came and went gathered at the bar counter, their eyes staring straight at her. A beautiful woman was concentrating on concocting the wine. There was a smile on her lips. Her hot and beautiful lips were so beautiful that it was intoxicating. She enjoyed the infatuated eyes around her very much. With a wink, Tang Menjing handed out the cocktail and said, "Passionate Desert, which one is it?" "It's mine." A young and handsome man reached out his hand without hesitation. However, he deliberately put his hand forward and held Tang Menjing's exposed wrist, gently stroking it, and whispered, "Do you have a date tonight?" This was the famous masquerade bar in Kingstown, and the fun here was also very exciting. The bartenders here were often changed, because each bartender would be on duty after being carefully trained. With their skilled bartending skills and beautiful appearance, they brought benefits to the bar. On the surface, they were bartenders, but in fact, it was another kind of money and sex trade. The beauty pulled her hand back and pushed him away. She said in a low voice, "Stop fooling around. I'm still working." The young man chuckled and sat in front of her ambiguously. He said, "My passion is like a desert. This cup of passionate desert is for you." The beauty chuckled, "Really?" "Of course." The child smiled frivolously. "Why don't we have an in-depth exchange tonight and let you understand my passion?" "That depends on whether you will let him go or not." The beauty pretended to be in a dilemma. The young master chuckled and shouted, "Old Gao." Old Gao was the owner of this bar and he knew a lot of people. When he saw the young man, his expression suddenly changed. He smiled and walked over. "Young Master Zhao, what's wrong?" "This beauty, I want to take her away tonight. Do you have any objections?" When old Gao heard this, he smiled sensibly. "Of course, little Gua, why aren't you thanking young Master Zhao?" The beauty heard this and nodded. "Thank you, young Master Zhao." "What's your name?" "Gua Xiaomei." He tried saying, "Wait a minute, can I find you a gigolo?" "Gigolo?" Tang Menjing was wearing a mask and her expression could not be seen. However, her lips curled into a mocking smile and said, "You mean, you don't want to do it with me?" Dash. Chapter 759. Gigolo. Tang Menjing's face was covered by a mask, but her lips were curled in a mocking smile. "You mean, you don't want to do it with me?" Before Mr. Zhao could speak, Tang Menjing's hand was already in front of him. Frightened, Mr. Zhao screamed. Mr. Zhao closed his eyes and screamed. Tang Menjing giggled. Her voice was as clear and pleasant as a bell. "Look at you. Don't be scared. Why don't you want to do something so comfortable? Come on, we are all adults. You were excited, weren't you? Just now was just now, but, after looking at her face, he could not bring himself to do it." Tang Menjing noticed his rejection and chuckled, but her eyes were even colder. "Since you don't want to, I have to," Mr. Zhao looked resigned. He turned her over, pressed her on the edge of the bed, tore off her clothes, and closed his eyes. Tang Menjing narrowed her eyes and enjoyed it. Young Master Zhao wanted to cry but no tears came out. If word of this got out, it would be shameful. A man like him was actually raped by a woman. But regardless of her face, the taste of this woman was still very good. After it was over, Mr. Zhao lit a cigarette. For the first time, he felt that a woman's body was so alluring. The water in the bathtub continued to run until it overflowed and dripped on the floor. Tang Menjing sat on Mr. Zhao and suddenly chuckled. She pressed his shoulder and pushed him into the water. Mr. Zhao thought she was joking and did not mind. But suddenly, she pressed his face into the water. Mr. Zhao immediately felt a sense of crisis. When he was struggling to get up, he felt a sharp pain on his neck. In a blink of an eye, the pain pierced through his throat and through every nerve in his body. Mr. Zhao struggled crazily. The pain in his throat became more and more intense as air flowed out. Tang Menjing happily watched the bubbles bubbling up and could not help but laugh out loud. Blood dyed the bathtub and the bathroom red. Even Tang Menjing's body was full of red marks. Young Master Zhao's struggles became weaker and weaker. Finally, he lay in the water, his eyes rolled back. His face was filled with despair for the person above him, and the fear of death. That's great. Tang Menjing kissed him on the cheek. You have the same birthday as Li Xicheng. Otherwise, do you think you could sleep with me? If you're done enjoying it, then go die. He stood up and slowly washed his body. Then, he calmly dried his hair and dressed himself. Only then did he calmly walk out of the room. She went downstairs and hailed a taxi. This sexy and hot beauty quickly disappeared into the night. The twins' birthday was today, and preparations had started early in the morning. The old man knew that he didn't have much time left. Whatever he could do for his children and grandchildren, he would do it himself. He picked out cake patterns for Desu and Ursu. Desu liked cheese, and Ursu liked strawberries. The old man simply combined them into one and turned it into a cheese-strawberry cake. When the plane landed, it was already past 2 in the afternoon. The children had woken up on the plane and were in high spirits. They hopped off the plane and cheered as they returned home. Chapter 760. When the plane landed, it was already past 2:00 in the afternoon. The children had woken up on the plane and were in high spirits. They hopped off the plane and cheered as they returned home. The bodyguards came back with their luggage. Li Yao and Qin Shuhua came back with their grandchildren. Before they entered the door, they saw the old man waiting at the door and hurried forward. Dad, it's so hot outside. Why don't you wait inside? The old man didn't seem to hear Li Zhao's words. When he saw the children coming back, he was so happy that his face wrinkled and greeted the little babies. Great-grandfather. Li Jianxian shouted. Hello, great-grandfather. Li Mosen shouted politely. Hug me, great-grandfather. Li Jianrui was the most direct and reached out to the old man. The old man's face was full of pity. He picked up Li Jianrui and smiled lovingly. Did you have fun this time? Fun. Li Jianrui happily hugged the old man's neck and said, Mom became a beautiful bride, so beautiful. Oh, bride, it's a pity that great-grandfather didn't see it, it's a pity, there's a video. Li Jianxian jumped over, holding a tablet in his hand, and said, Great-grandfather, I'll show you the video. Okay. The old man carried Li Jianrui in and sat on the sofa, letting Li Jianxian show him the video. The dreamy and grand scene had far exceeded the old man's imagination. He couldn't help but exclaim, It's beautiful. Is the scene so beautiful? Yes. The scene is more beautiful than this. Li Jianrui couldn't help but say, looking at the tablet, there are more beautiful, a lot of fireworks, and there are a lot of stars in the sky. We can't see the kind of stars in Kingstown. So beautiful, so beautiful. The old man couldn't help laughing. He reached out and stroked her little head. He said, "Really, is Ursu happy?" "Happy." Li Jianrui smiled brightly. He, great-grandfather, look, this is Ursu, this is Desu, brother Mosen is here, and the adults say we are so cute and beautiful. The great-grandfather touched the little girl's little head and said with a kind smile, "Our Ursu is the cutest little princess." When Li Jianrui heard the elders say that, she was a little proud. She snorted and looked at her brother. Li Jianxian ignored her and showed the tablet to Captain Li. About halfway through the video, Li Jianrui felt that something was wrong. She looked around and asked, "Brother, where is brother Mosen?" Without looking up, Li Jianxian said, "Maybe in the room." "Go take a look." "Okay." Li Jianrui nodded and ran into the room with her short legs. As soon as he entered, he found that the room was empty. "Brother Mosen?" Li Jianrui went in, turned around, and shouted, "Brother Mosen." There was no reply. After the little guy circled around, he went out again. Little did she know that brother Mosen, whom she was looking for, had walked out again. At this moment, by the small lake not far from the Li family's house, two figures, one big and one small, faced each other. Tang Menjing looked at the little guy with white skin and blue eyes, chuckled and asked, "Do you know me?" Li Mosen frowned and looked at the woman who was wearing sunglasses and a hat and was wrapped up tightly. "You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.